International affairs commentator Doug Herbert joins us for Global Grid with more. Doug, the scientists, aren't they? They're almost unanimous in urging Emmanuel Macron to announce another lockdown. Why isn't he following their advice?
He's not following their advice for a pretty simple reason. Emmanuel Macron is a politician who most likely has his sights on the political horizon in 2022, another run for re-election. And as such, he is asking the question that perhaps any politician would ask in his situation. Would another lockdown, despite the scientific consensus that you mentioned, would it be economically? Would it be socially? And would it be politically acceptable to the French? Because you can't really shove it down their throats. There's still fear of catching the virus in France as in elsewhere. That hasn't gone away, Stuart. But what has perhaps evolved with the pandemic in general, not just in France, but elsewhere, is an accompanying sense that there are trade-offs, that while health is important and public health is important, a lot of people are also putting more of a premium on things like their economic well-being and their mental well-being. There's been a lot of depression in France, and there's this real sort of calculus now, this weighing and balancing of the health benefits of a lockdown, and still absolute priority is still given to health restrictions and keeping the public healthy, but also trying to counterbalance that with those economic and mental health considerations. What's interesting here is that you mentioned the scientists being unanimous, and they really are unanimous, because it's not simply a matter of every day of delay, there are more cases, but what more and more science is showing is that every day you delay perhaps a new lockdown, in the circumstances such as this, where you have a new British variant right now, there's 10% of the new cases detected in France are being attributed to the British variant. That's way up from earlier this month, when it was just over 3% of those cases were due to the British variant. Given that, you have each day of delay is an exponential rise in new cases, and logically deducing also a rise in the number of hospitalizations and, unfortunately, deaths. So it's not like one day delay is equal to, the number of cases from the day before. It really does have an exponential cascade effect. Those are the considerations weighing on Emmanuel Macron. He says he wants to consider all the numbers, but there's also a very heavy political, social, economic calculus that he is right now juggling.
So what are the various scenarios that they're considering then, Doug?
Yeah, the scenarios are, as you said, the strict lockdown scenario, which is really what took the French, it was like a bad case of trauma and shock last March 18th. That first lockdown where literally the entire country shut down. Nothing was open. You had people, the schools were closed, the shops were shut, bars and restaurants and cinemas and theaters. You didn't go to work. Most people were working from home unless they had absolutely essential frontline jobs or were health workers. There's that. That is the strictest scenario. And what's interesting is that, a majority of French seem to be opposed right now to that. The first lockdown, Stuart, it was 93% of the French accepted it. They hated it. It was begrudging, but they accepted it, 93%. The second lockdown, October 29th, which was a softer form of lockdown, you still had 2/3 of French accepting it. And right now, that strictest scenario, a March-like lockdown, you really have a divided French public in opinion. About only half would really be willing to accept it. Divided by age group, under 50s, in general, opposed to a new strict lockdown. Over 50s would favor it or rather accept it. And then you have the softer versions where some schools would remain open, some shops would remain open, maybe non-essential businesses would remain open. And then the softer version would be perhaps a curfew on weekdays and a confinement, a lockdown on weekends. That's perhaps a more remote scenario. More likely is some form of lockdown, moderate or strict.
So, Doug, bearing in mind this could be then the third nationwide lockdown in 10 months, are the French going to swallow it? Are they going to obey it?
Yeah, well, those statistics I just gave you, right, saying that, as far as a strict lockdown is concerned, people are much more wary right now unless it can absolutely be proven that a strict lockdown is absolutely necessary. So people are more likely now to, in a sense, while accepting it, there's going to be a minority of people, and it will also be more among the younger population in France who might just outright defy it. There is a hashtag that has gone viral in France. Je ne me reconfinerai pas. I will not go back into lockdown. And that gives a sense of what the sentiment is. You had some videos have been popping up and gone viral in recent days here of one restaurant owner in the city of Marseille opened up his restaurant, served diners, obviously illegal. Police shut it down. Even a police station here near Paris, they were shown having a little party inside. It shows a sense of the defiance, a sense of the spirit of rebellion there. And the younger you are, the more likely you're going to say, that you're going to buck some of those rules and defy the lockdown. So it's a wait and see thing, but there will be a spirit of defiance. I can guarantee you that.
Doug, thanks very much. Doug Herbert, international affairs commentator there for today's Global Grid.